Our next guest is an unlikely ballerina, but Misty Copeland, you guys, I came to know her on Instagram and Twitter and on social media, but this young lady rose from a tumultuous childhood to become only the third African-American soloist in the American Ballet Theater's long history, in the first over a 20-year period, right?
Yes.
I'm kind of in awe right now because she's so amazing. And I read your book, and this is why she's here in Dallas. Yeah. This amazing book she wrote, Life in Motion, An Unlikely Ballerina, where you tell your story. Start from the beginning, because most people think of ballet as something like very affluent, something you start very young. Tell us your story.
Yeah, and I'm an unlikely ballerina because of all of those things. I didn't come from a typical background of someone who would be exposed to classical ballet. I grew up in a single-parent household, one of 6 kids. I'm African American. I grew up very poor, and ballet found me when I was 13 years old at a program at the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay, stop. She's just going through this story. You were 13 years old when you started doing ballet.
Yes, which is very, very late. You have to get the body when it's young, before you hit puberty, so you can mold it and shape it. And I only trained for 4 years before I became a professional and moved to New York.
And I read in your book it said something like 3 months after you started taking lessons, you were already on point. Isn't that the first picture right there?
That was the first time I ever stood on point, yes.
And it was only 3 months after you started?
Yeah.
Okay, so you knew you had the God-given talent for this. What happened next?
I did. I had everything that it took physically. I could imitate the teacher. I could kind of follow along. But 4 years later, when I became a professional, I realized how different I was. I was the only African-American woman in the company for 10 years.
And what was that like for you?
It was really lonely, and it was really difficult to feel at an age when you're becoming an adult, to feel that I didn't fit in. And I didn't. I didn't have the same upbringing as a lot of the people around me, the same background. It was very lonely, and it took having amazing mentors that entered my life to really keep me on track and guide me and say, you were born to do this, don't give up.
Now, do you think you lost out on parts because you're African American? I know that question comes up a lot. Do you think that came into play for you?
It's so difficult to kind of separate things and say, this is why. But I know from the history of classical ballet and African American women, there aren't very many that have made it to a top level in an elite company. And I do think it's because of the color of my skin and our skin that we've just never really been a part of this culture, and I definitely want to change that.
And there were other issues too, right, with your body type, because you're very athletic. Okay, she's so tiny sitting next to me, but you're incredibly athletic, and that also created some problems, right?
Yeah, they're just I guess you could call them setbacks, but I overcame them. They just continued to come. You know, once I became a professional, I all of a sudden matured into this curvy woman with a bust and with more muscle. And all of those things also are not thought of as a ballerina. And I just worked so hard to prove that my talent was enough, that I didn't have to fit into this box and this mold of what everyone thinks of, which is a white woman with no chest and no muscle, and I was everything that that wasn't. So.
Oh, I love it. And you know, this isn't just a story about a ballerina, because throughout your life, you mentioned growing up very poor in San Pedro out there in California. There were some other issues you had to deal with along the way, issues with your mom, guardian. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. My teacher, Cynthia Bradley, who saw me at the Boys and Girls Club and brought me into her school on full scholarship, knew immediately that I had the talent to become a professional. So I had 4 short years to train, which is unheard of. So I ended up moving in with her so that I could train intensely. And it was difficult for my mom. You know, I was away from her the entire week. I would come home on weekends when we were living in a motel at the time. All 5 of my siblings, all 6 of us. So it was really difficult. My mom felt at a certain point after, 2 years of living with my teacher that she was losing me. And there ended up being this big legal court battle that ensued. And I was 15 years old. It was traumatic. My intimate personal life was displayed all over the media, and I was so shy already and insecure. The only place I felt at home was on the stage. So it was really, really difficult. But I think all of those things made me the strong person that I am today, and it makes it easier for me to want to push for other girls that look like me or other minorities who feel like they're not a part of this world to just diversify ballet.
Such an inspiration, and I love it. Stick around. Misty is going to be here for another segment. Come back when the broadcast returns.